I just want to first thank, of course, Cedar Valley and the University of Northern Iowa for the opportunity to have this very important question. My name is Jamie Butler-Chidozie. I serve as the Director for Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Justice at the University of Northern Iowa, and definitely have the pleasure of moderating this important conversation around Black Lives Matter and activism. And so we'll jump right in. We have a phenomenal panel who I'm going to first ask to introduce yourselves, take a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves, as well as to just share, we'll delve deeper into the conversation a little later, but just give an overview of your just thoughts around Black Lives Matter and activism. So we'll start there.
Well, my name is Joyce Levingston. I am from the Cedar Valley. I'm a doc student at the University of Northern Iowa, majoring in allied health, recreation, and community services. And the director of the Waterloo Momentums program as well, which focuses on employment barriers and overcoming those barriers. As far as Black Lives Matter and activism, I have helped organize many protests here in the Cedar Valley, and really focus on, making sure that we remain active and making sure that we are steadily applying the pressure that needs to be applied out here, not just focusing on police brutality, but focusing on several sectors of the community and social justice.
Hi, I'm Ryan Stevenson. I was born and raised here in Waterloo. Graduated from UNI in 2018, degree in political communication. Currently, my job is I'm a district representative for Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer. I've worked on different political campaigns on various levels of government, and I don't really consider myself an activist, but I feel like in this battle for equality, we have to take our skill sets and apply them to the different areas that we have to tackle. In my experience and my knowledge is in politics, so I just have used my skills to push different policies and ordinances, and was thankful to be able to work with State Representative Ross Smith on a police reform bill, a more perfect union on the state level. To pass that with unanimous decision in the House and the Senate was big, and so now I've just been trying to do what I can to move things forward through policy on the local level as well. So.
I don't believe Stacy is on. Stacy Walker is on right now. I think they're having maybe some issues getting on. But Anthony, is Anthony on?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, Anthony, would you introduce yourself, please, and
Sure,
just share your
sure.
initial thoughts on Black Lives Matter and activism?
Sure. Just as an FYI, I know I was texting Stacy, who's having some trouble getting in, so hopefully he'll be able to join us, hopefully. But again, my name is Anthony Arrington. I'm a native of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, down the road here. I have spent a lot of time in Waterloo during my work with Manpower. I was a branch manager at Manpower for several years and managing business development in multiple markets, including the Cedar Valley. I currently am the owner, one of the managing partners of Top Rank. We are a professional and executive search and diversity consulting firm. We're located in Cedar Rapids, but we function anywhere anybody needs us in the nation. We're unapologetic about our desire to help advance and leverage diverse leaders whenever possible. So when we're recruiting and searching, we always have a diversity lens on a focus, as well as from a consulting standpoint. As I think about this Black Lives Matter movement and my activism, I like what Ryan said, because I think I'm personally somewhere between an advocate, which is different than an activist.
Absolutely.
There's a clear difference between those two. And I probably, in the last 4 to 5 years, have fallen somewhere in between there. If you were to ask me where I've been for the last 6 months, I've been an activist. Probably cost me business, to be honest with you. When I think of the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening, I'm a member of the Advocates for Social Justice, which Stacey Walker is as well, which was a local organic Black Lives Matter movement that erupted in Cedar Rapids post George Floyd. We had a lot of folks doing things, but that organization sort of morphed. And when I think about that activist side, I've had to ask myself, what does that really mean? And what does activism mean? And to me,
Right.
it means sacrifice. It means sacrifice. And I'm at a point where have decided I have to make more sacrifices. And that means personal and professional sacrifices at times to do what is the right thing to do. So I know that I got a mouthpiece. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I believe my expertise is in people skills. I'm a recruiter and those sorts of things professionally, but I believe my contribution to this movement is my relationship building and my people skills, and the ability to wear the emotions on the shoulder and try to get people to move in the right direction, no matter what area of the world they come from. So thank you for having me. Look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And then we also have Brandon Jackson. I believe Brandon's online. I thought I saw him.
Yes, I am on.
Yes. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. It's saying that cannot show my video.
Okay.
So if the host can do that. I'm sorry. I do apologize as well. It's quite busy at work, so I am in the car right now speaking to you guys. But my name is Brandon Jackson. Born and raised here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I am the founder and CEO of Dream Sports, which is a youth service nonprofit organization. We work with youth with sporting different opportunities for kids that can't afford it. And we also work with a mentorship program in school and also community mentorship program for at-risk youth. And then on top of that, I am currently the president of the African American Professional Group in Cedar Rapids. And along with Anthony said, as far as this Black Lives Matter, I feel like more towards the activist. And along with him, myself, I feel like it has cost me different relationships, jobs, opportunities, partnership. Cost me a lot, but I know at the end of the day, something that I'm passionate about, and something, especially with my job and working with youth, especially people of color, I feel like it's important that I stick to my mission and my passion. And at the end of the day, I hope it pays off and things do make a difference and change.
Thank you, panelists, for that introduction. Anthony and Ryan and Joy and Brandon really come to this conversation with a wealth of knowledge. And actually, all of you were kind of getting to the first question. And it's around the terms. So what does it mean to be an activist? And Anthony, you have pointed out that, initially you have been kind of walking down the pathline of more so being an advocate and that being different. And so kind of taking that piece a little deeper, how would you define activism? I know Anthony and Brandon, you kind of spoke to it, but you may have some more thoughts on that. And then Ryan, I know you described yourself as not an activist, but I want to hear from others. Do you see yourself as an activist?
Right. Yeah, and I would encourage anybody to please correct me or ad lib. But when I think of, an advocate versus an advocate really is somebody who's focused on helping with policy, right? They may be pushing behind the scenes, helping with policy, working with the Ryan Stevensons of the world, right? How do we move policy forward? How do we advocate in state capitol? How do we work in our own backyards with local elected leaders or organizations, or even in your own company? Control of policy procedures, right? How do we move the needle from that perspective? And an activist is a disruptor. Quite frankly, activists are disruptors. Bold, individuals who, or groups or organizations who not only just march in the streets, and I think that's important to differentiate. It's not, activists aren't people who go around tearing up buildings every day and tearing up cities. Activists are bold, opinionated individuals who, in my opinion, are bottom line communicators. They will stand in front of the office of elected officials and let them know how they feel. They will come and disrupt meetings, political meetings. They will march in the streets. They will hold signs. They will be bold and really be unapologetic about their communication and what is right and what is wrong. And they'll work with advocates and they'll work with allies. And so as I kind of see that's where that clear difference is to me. And sometimes being vocal and being disruptive is uncomfortable. And activists are okay getting uncomfortable and making people uncomfortable because you can't have results without being uncomfortable. So they have to work together. And some of us are more on one side than the other. So hopefully that kind of helps my thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you want to go, Ryan?
Go ahead.
Okay. I definitely agree with that. For me, it's really about walking our talk in all of the levels. There's so many levels to fighting social injustice that, we do have to work together. So even though I might be out here protesting and marching and making signs and doing things like that, like I'm not doing that without talking to Ryan Stevenson, like, yo, this is what's going on, and also seeking out his advice and really, letting other people know like how we're about to move, and taking advice from even those who have done this before us, and also how we are presenting ourselves for even the youth who are watching us and the younger ones who are looking at us and what we're doing, and how we set that example as well. And also, like Anthony was saying, as far as being like disruptors, like we have to disrupt the hegemonies that are constantly presented. And we do have to disrupt like that concept of whiteness in order for us to really be able to share our lived experiences. And that's important. So I think that for me being an activist, I can't be an activist without also advocating, because sometimes in my role, like I have to, play that advocate part as well. I can't always go take it to the streets, or I can't always, turn up how I want to in certain settings. But when I do, I definitely make sure that I'm unapologetic with it.
Yeah. I guess I said I don't see myself as an activist, right? Because just naturally, I'm gonna show up to the march, right? But I wouldn't like organize it, right? Or the signs and the yelling and doing a speech, right? Like naturally, that's not me, right? But to get down to it though, like everyone on this call has to see themselves as an activist within their own networks, right? Like in this moral moment, we all have to be uncomfortable, and we all have to be okay with making other people uncomfortable to call out the things that that they are doing wrong, or acknowledging their blind spots, or whatever we have to do to tear down these systems, right? So while I might not be like a frontline activist giving a speech, or anybody on this call might not be, right? But it's all our duties to be activists within our own networks, right? It's all our duties to call people out when they're wrong. So I don't really see myself as like, an activist like Joyce is sometimes, right? But I know that the position that I play and anything that I'm involved in, if something isn't cool, and this comes to all people, right? I'm a defender of all people, and if something isn't right, I'm gonna call it out, and I really, when it comes to the unapologetic thing, right? My philosophy is that I'm not gonna be the only one uncomfortable. So if
Right.
I'm uncomfortable, I'm making everybody else uncomfortable too, because I'm
Mhm.
gonna speak on how I feel about something. So I guess I am an activist in that sense, but I will encourage everyone to start seeing themselves as an activist in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. My uncle used to say, my uncle's Dieter Doolin, he's the president of NAACP, and I have these conversations with him a lot, these sidebar conversations a lot, because he comes from another era. And I like what Joyce said of learning from people before us, how we can make space in this movement and where our roles there. And he always tells me, meet people where they're at. He goes, meet people where they're at, meet the moment where it's at. And everybody has a role to play. We need people in the street. We need people in the courtroom. We need people in the clerk's office. We need Ryan Stevenson's. We need Stacy's. Everybody has a role in this activism game, and everybody has to play that, do the best they can in their role. And so, to your point, Ryan, everybody is not built or desired or has the personality or makeup or want to give speeches and march in the streets, but they're so effective in so many other ways in this game. So.
Um, I want to pause for just a second. I believe Stacy is here, and so I definitely want to give Stacy an opportunity to join in on the panel discussion as our other panelists. So, Stacy, would you please give just a kind of quick overview, introduce yourself? You could talk about initial thoughts around Black Lives Matter and activism. Right now, the question that I posed to the panelists was kind of defining for yourself what activism is, and then how you kind of take that on. So if you kind of want to join in that way, that would be much appreciated.
Excellent. First off, thank you all for having me. And I appreciate Joy Briscoe for inviting me to this and helping to put this on, and to the other panelists as well. I appreciate it. My name is Stacey Walker. I have the honor and privilege of serving as a Linn County supervisor here. Linn County is the second largest county in Iowa, with the second largest minority population in the state. I know in Black Hawk County, Waterloo, they have the most African Americans per capita. But in terms of sheer numbers, I think Linn County has more minorities overall. At any rate, I really appreciate the conversation denoting the differences between activists and advocates. And I want to just say, I think everybody kind of hit the nail on the head. Everyone has a role to play. I call the Black Lives Matter movement a Black liberation movement.
Absolutely.
And we've been struggling for liberation in one sense or the other since the slave ships arrived on the eastern seaboard of the New World. And we have had new kinds of struggles in front of us every generation since. And so in this liberation movement, like in any other liberation movement, there are many different roles. And I would say shortly after I was elected in 2016, getting to office was a whole battle in and of itself, and we don't have time to go into that. But shortly after I was elected, there was an incident in our community, an officer-involved shooting, where a police officer shot and paralyzed an unarmed Black man. And I quickly realized that no elected official in our town was going to speak up on behalf of this individual. It was baffling to me. I mean, I knew all the elected officials here. I had come up with a lot of them. I had worked on campaigns. We talk about systemic racism and injustice. We talk about police reform, but no one was doing anything about this. And prior to that incident, if I may, I would say I was sort of on a career path that if I stayed the course, probably would have advanced to higher office a lot faster than I think it's going to take me, because I chose to speak out. I chose to make people uncomfortable. And right now I'm occupying a space of an activist elected official working with the community as a peer, as opposed to a traditional role that a policymaker may have, whereas you get input from the community and then you try to go make a compromise. You can't compromise on Black liberation. This is a fundamental issue of our humanity, our right to exist peacefully in a country free from harm, whether that be systemic harm, whether it be harm perpetrated by the police. We have a 1 in 3 chance of encountering police officers, and the leading cause of death for young African-American men is one of the leading causes of death for young African-American men is interaction with police officers. That's untenable. That is not right. If this was happening to white women in this country, they would have deployed the military to stop it. So Black liberation is an all hands on deck endeavor for this country. That requires all of these roles, whether you're an advocate, whether you're an ally, whether you're an activist. And I think we can kind of blend those roles together, but it requires all of us in every capacity until Black people are safe in this country.
Yes, amen to that. Absolutely. And I think it is an important conversation to have in regards to making sure that everyone has a clear understanding of those terms so that we can know how we ourselves can interact in activism. And so this kind of leads to our next topic or our next question in talking about, I heard some common themes around activism as far as it's challenging. There's a sacrifice. There's a level of risk that you all, as the panel was talking about. There is definitely disruptive behavior, which, of course, I like to think of the other 3 A's, I call it stepping up your A game, absolutely falls underneath activism, whether you're acting as an activist, an advocate, an ally, and then of course now with the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements, bringing in the abolitionists. What does that mean? That's a whole other topic. We don't have time to get into that today. But again, that everyone has their place in that. So with that sacrifice, that challenge, that can hurt. That can hurt you in many ways. That's risky. Can you describe how you actualize Black Lives Matter in your work, or how you actualize activism in that work, with that understanding that this is I'm making a conscious decision to take a risk here?
I think my life, I've experienced some various things because of personal decisions, right? So I've been at what most would consider the lowest place that you can be, right? I've been in prison multiple times, right? So I feel like I've been as low as I could be, right? So to put everything on the line and to say, that I've risked losing this or losing that, like I've lost it all already, right? And you look back on history, right? We have Medgar Evers lost his life. John Lewis had his skull cracked, right? Like it's so many people that have, receive death threats regularly, right? In this fight, right? So for me to worry about a job or a friendship or a potential opportunity, right, in the name of not only what's gonna make things better for my personal life, but my family, my friends, and even my son, right? I'm raising a young Black man that, and I'm teaching him, he sees my walk daily, right? That you don't, not only do you not just allow you settle for anything yourself, right? But you don't stand by and allow something to happen to others and you're not doing anything about it, right? Since they've been young, I've taught them about volunteering and giving back to the community, right? So that goes hand in hand with just standing up for the cause, right? Even with my daughter, right? I'm teaching her that, when right now we hear a lot about women's rights, women's health rights, and various things, right? So I'm teaching her as a 7 or 8 year old how to organize and mobilize. So even if these topics are still discussed when she becomes an adult, that she'll know what to do to fight and advocate, so no one is telling her what to do with her body, right? So we talking about risk, right? It's so many it's so many people that have come before us that have risked so much, right? So, like I said, for me, a job or a friendship or opportunity is nothing. Just going through different things here locally, right? And it's exhausting, it's tiring, it's stressful, right? But I got a mentor. He told me, man, he said, you got like 10 or 15 more years to start talking about that you tired, right? Because they've been fighting this fight for a long time. If you look at it with the dragging on our police cars, right? They've been fighting for this since they put it on there in the 60s, right? So who am I here in 2020 to be like, I give up, right? This fight has been going on for years, right? So in the name of Black liberation, to me, I don't see any risk.
Yeah, dang, that's I used to think about risk a lot, that's kind of why I brought that up earlier, because I know I was one of those people. At least I believe that it's kind of quiet maybe 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Was I worried about business by speaking up about anything related to race relations? This is pre-George Floyd, pre-Trump. I'm just saying, generally speaking, sure. I think I probably fell into that I let it go mode. It's not worth arguing about. Don't worry about it today, right? And I think about all those little things that I let go in my life, those little conversations, those little microaggressions, and even those big issues that I let slide by. And I would say over the past 5 years, it has become a conscious decision to not allow that to happen anymore, to find ways to speak out and be willing to accept those consequences, because those John Lewises and because those Medgar Evers and because those people before us accepted those consequences. And like, I think I'm pretty smart. I can find a job if I got to go work at McDonald's and sell my house and not live the way I live today. Am I okay with that? I'm okay with that. I've been poor. I've been without. But I worry about my family, my kids who've never seen that, right? Because I put myself in a position so that they would never have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So you think about that. I think about, my kids are grown now, but I think about my reflection on them publicly. What's going to happen to them? You know, my wife is white. My intersectionality runs deep. And I have no qualms about that. But I know my wife is at risk as a white woman. I'm sure she's had calls on her phone as far back as 10 years ago, threatening her life as a nigger loving bitch with a nigger husband and 2 nigger kids. Like, this is conversation that's happened, like, for real, right? And I have to think about that every day I leave my house, or every day I jump on the internet, or every day I have a bold opinion. Who's watching? Right. Who's going to be the next person? Yeah. Maybe somebody's looking out to do something. So those are sacrifices that I make. And when I talk to white leaders about this and I talk about their sacrifice, they have a sacrifice too, because there's this fork in the road today and they have to make decisions as part of this activist game that they play as allies as well. What are you willing to sacrifice? And I say this to every white leader that's come to me with this conversation about how can I help? What can I do to be involved? Are you willing to sacrifice? Because this may mean family members. This may mean the $1 million contract with your company. This may mean, like my friend Steve Shriver here in Cedar Rapids, who had bricks thrown through his business windows. As soon as he started opening his mouth as a white man, being an ally for this movement, people left his business. People don't come to his restaurants anymore. People broke his windows at night. He took that sacrifice. So my question is, what are we all willing to risk? Ryan's been to prison. What the heck do we have to complain about? Right. So let me at that point. That's sacrifice.
Brandon, you were unmuting. Did you want to jump in?
Yes. Both of those are definitely great points. And me as a kind of new upcoming business person and also for a nonprofit organization, part of our funding and stuff, it comes from funders, especially within here in the city. And part of the work I do just with the at-risk youth and things like that. And we're trying to partner up with the police department, things like that, so we can build a relationship, communication. I'm trying to keep kids out the system by showing them there's different ways how to go about things. And what's so crazy, a couple weeks back, I've been told for a grant and stuff I'm trying to get here within the city that I need to slow down as far as my activism with the advocates for social justice, because I'm being seen and some people don't want, are afraid to be in the middle of it, which is very disturbing. And it's like, well, this is who I am. I'm fighting for my passion and who I am as a person. And you're telling me I don't need to be seen or be out there just because of funding and things like that. Is definitely, it broke me down. It made me depressed thinking about it. Like, what's the right way to go about it? Is it worth giving everything up just for funding and things like that? So it's like, it's something it's not worth it. I would rather be working hard to try to get to where I want to get and still feel like I'm able to sleep at night because I did the right thing. And the kids I'm talking to, they have these questions on a daily basis. It's like, what's going on nationwide, what they're dealing with as far as police and interactions and things like that. So I had to be someone and I go and build that trust with them, because I tell them the truth. I don't sugarcoat anything or whatnot, but I tell them what's the right way to go about things, how to handle your anger and things like that. So it's a lot of sacrifices that's being made. And I look at it, and not even the ones that before us that made all these sacrifices, but I look more of the kids and my kids in the future. Like, I want this to end or come to where my kids won't have to keep fighting the same fight. I want to educate more people and get more people on board. So 20 years down the line, 25 years down the line, things will be more normal or more safe. So that's kind of why I'm in it. And like, the things I do is for the future. I hope that, things change fast, but it don't look like it. And just working with, or trying to work with people that just don't want to get in the middle of things. It's like, I want to sit down and have this conversation. I want to sit down and talk and see why you feel the way you feel. I want to make people uncomfortable, but I want to let them know where I'm coming from as a Black man trying to make it here and what I go through on a daily basis. I want you to understand my culture and what we have to fight and deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joy.
I just wanted to speak from, a Black woman's perspective on the sacrifice. Being a mother and someone who has grown up in a predominantly white, not only state, but a predominantly white community, because I grew up in Cedar Falls. I've only attended predominantly white institutions. I've never known anything except poverty. So as far as, worrying about jobs, I feel like if I have to worry about my voice or not being able to be who I am or speak up for myself and others, then I'm not at the right position. I'm not in the right company. And, even there's some of my friends that are uncomfortable around me, or, you do have to watch how you talk around me, because I am, like W.E.B. Du Bois talks about, that double consciousness, that veil that we have, being able to see the world in a way where white people think that, us as Black people, we have to act in a way that is acceptable to white people, but we have our own world as well. And only Black folks, have that double consciousness. And so, and I think Ryan has said this to me before, like, you have to be willing, like, some have to be willing to fall on the sword. And that's absolutely true. When I think about, my 3 daughters, and often thinking about just, 34 years of, racial abuse. People call it microaggressions, racial trauma, racial abuse. Sitting in the classrooms, even speaking my truth about being a student at UNI, being there for 8 years, and, what I've endured in the classroom. But, knowing that, you know, I have been able to use that institution as a platform to reach, you know, the Black and Brown community and, you know, do things within that community as well. So it's something that maybe you have a thought about, or something that you think about, like, oh, what, you know, what, how are they going to perceive me, or not always wanting to be the angry Black woman. I don't care about any of that, because, you know, my truth is going to, like I said earlier, dismantle those hegemonies that are always presented. This is a good place. This campus is inclusive. This is a good community. These are good schools. I read at one of the protests that we had in Cedar Falls, my daughter had sent me a list of her experiences, and I didn't read through it before until I got to the protest. And when I read her lived experiences within junior high and elementary school that she had gone through only at 14 years old, it's the exact same thing that I went through living in Cedar Falls as well. And that really broke me down as a parent, because I'm thinking, you know, oh, I'm putting my kids in, you know, the good schools, I'm raising my kids in the good neighborhoods. And it's like, nah, the mental and the racial abuse, the mental trauma that, you know, they'd have to face, I just felt like, you know, at that moment, like, did I do them justice, or, you know, did I fail them? So it's being, you know, being aware of what it really is. And yeah, you know, not really caring about other people's feelings all the time.
So true. And I think it's important. That's why we kind of move this conversation to really challenge, and not even challenge, to hold accountable, you know, because we're specifically talking about Black Lives Matter as it relates to activism, white people to take on some of the brunt of the sacrifice, of the risk taking, so to speak, because for far too long, Black identified people have had to do just what you all have been talking about in regards to editing ourselves in public spaces, even the thought processes that kind of go into play that are very much impacted, that impacts our decision making, our moves. And then sometimes, I know you could probably resonate with this, sometimes I say, well, you know what, whatever happens is just gonna have to happen today. This is how I'm going in. I don't really have time to code switch. I'm getting old, so I can't continue to move in that way. So I want to kind of switch the conversation a little bit to talk about that. In the world of equity, diversity, and inclusion, allyship takes on many forms depending on the identity that, you know, we're speaking about. So today we're specifically talking about race. So let's not make any qualms about it. We're not necessarily talking about anything other than that. And specifically the violence and that has been perpetrated on Black bodies, you know, throughout our history, as a community, as a society. How would you challenge white people to act as allies in this effort to progress Black liberation? I'll give an example. So last semester we had students who protested at the campus, and I was fortunate enough to kind of be in the planning room before they kind of went to protest the board of the board of trustees meeting. I can't remember what it was. It was either that or in downtown Cedar Falls. And similarly to how students in Minnesota and other areas around the country said, if the police are called, basically the white students were instructed to circle all of the students of color, basically to take on the brunt of whatever that interaction with law enforcement would be. Now, that approach may not work necessarily in an organizational place or business, but that's just an example. What risk, or how can white people act as allies to progress Black liberation?
I would think they should get others close to them involved, get people uncomfortable, as far as using their privilege in local business owners and things like that, pressure them into getting involved in. Those are the ones that can really make a difference. The ones that kind of have a little bit of say and money within the city can put pressure on city leaders, and it's just going to move down the line. But they need to be active. They need to get in tune. They need to also just listen to the problem, what's going on, listen to the needs. There's just so many people that want to listen, don't know how. There's so many people that just don't want to be in the middle, but they do support. We need those type of people to get involved and get uncomfortable. That's the only thing I feel like that's a way that things are going to change. Those 50-50 people or whatnot, just be involved, get uncomfortable, get others involved, and listen.
So if I may jump in too, I agree with Brandon here. One of the examples you used about white folks literally putting their white bodies in between black bodies and the police. There's a beautiful video on social media where you see a protest in what looks to be like a city council chambers, and police are going to accost the black demonstrators, and you see white women putting their bodies in front of the police officers and these black activists, and you completely see a change in the behavior of the police officers. They go from being aggressive to literally asking the white women to move so that they can access black bodies. It is a striking video. I encourage you all to do a Google search to try to find it. It is striking. And it's no surprise to black people, but it may come as a surprise to white people that the same kind of violence that is perpetrated against black bodies, the black voice, the black psyche, is not perpetrated against white bodies, white voices, and the white psyche. And I know that to be a fact. In this community, one of the flagship policies I championed was a funding program to fund nonprofits in this community to help with youth development, to help stem the tide of gun violence, and to help stem the tide of cyclical poverty. It was a two-year fight convincing our city council government that this was a good idea to simply provide funding to other organizations in the community to help, quite honestly, to help black folks in this community. It was a fight. And it was headed to failure until I had a conversation with a white community leader. And I said to him, I said, if you really want this to succeed, you've got to lend your voice. You got to lend your voice to this and your validation. As Brandon alluded to in his comments, that's going to make it okay for white leaders in this community to support this endeavor. And sure enough, this and he understood. This white man, as soon as he said, hey, I think this is a good idea, then people on the city council here started to change their opinion about it. And I, to this day, believe the only reason that effort is successful is because a white man spoke out about it. And so you have white bodies literally standing in the way of oppression. You have the white voice that can stand in the way of oppression. And you have the white psyche that can do it. And what I mean is, when white folks challenge themselves to understand this as an intellectual exercise, when they challenge their own empathy and their morality to see life through the lens of a black person, as we do, as W.E.B. Du Bois mentioned about double consciousness, which was brought up earlier, if they challenge themselves to do that, it makes it easier for them to do the other things and to be an ally in a way that's going to advance a cause. Anybody can put a Black Lives Matter sign in their yard, right? That's an easy action we can undertake. Does that have consequences? Sure, it has consequences. But if you want to move the needle, it's got to be more than a sign in the yard. It's got to be more than changing your profile picture black, all black, to signify solidarity. Those actions are important, but if you want to advance the needle, you've got to be willing to either put your body in between harm, to lend your voice, your credibility, to validate the Black liberation movement, and to challenge yourself intellectually about what it means to be an ally and an activist.
I would add to that and say, great point, Stacy and Brandon. And my message, and again, maybe we're preaching to the choir with some of the white folks that are on this call, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, you have to look in the mirror and understand and say, it's not my fault, right? Like I didn't cause this issue, but my culture did, right? So what can I do today to make a difference? We all have that responsibility, right? It's not you, and that's where, and I think about this, and it really gets me emotional when I think about what Trump is doing right now in terms of taking away diversity training and calling it racist, because it feels like we're blaming white people. This is not a blame game, right? This is history.
Right.
It's real. And if we're willing to like as Stacy said, humble ourselves and understand from another lens and just listen, that makes a difference, right? So my message to white folks, how do you do this? There's two things that you have to do to sacrifice. One, look in the mirror and understand it's not your individual fault, but it's your individual responsibility to make a difference in your bubble, in your world. And what is your world? That's the world where Uncle Bobby lives. That's the world where things happen at the Christmas party at your house or your company, where you know there's racism happening and you've historically not said anything about it. Because I don't want to upset Uncle Bobby, and I don't want to get not invited to the Christmas party next year, or I don't want to I'm going to lose that $1 million contract if I sit in this country club at dinner and listen to this white man talk about all those black people in the street and that they're thugs. If I sit and have my steak and I don't say anything to that man next to me, and I allow that conversation to go on, I'm contributing to the problem.
Right.
But for you to be able to stand up, you may have to do that. And that may mean that white man's not giving you that $1 million construction contract next year, or that Jimmy's not going to invite you to the party at your house, or that you're going to get excluded somewhere, or that somebody in your family you're going to have to come to crossroads with at some point. Those are sacrifices, right? We're not asking you to go get sprayed by hoses and shot. Maybe that's the extreme. But are you willing to take those steps? Are you willing to risk Uncle Jimmy? Are you willing to risk your country club golf invite? And again, this is rhetorical, but are you willing to risk those things in your life? That's the essence, right? And that's, you think about any movement we've had around Black liberation in this country, it has always involved white people sticking their bodies, their minds, or their intellect or their money in front of the problem. Yeah. So just ask yourself, where are you going to stand in that lane?
And at this time, it is 10:50. So we do have to wrap up the session. And I know we probably could go on and on. And so just in closing, first of all, thank you to our panel participants for taking the time out to share, to disclose, to be vulnerable. And thank you to all who are listening. And I will say there's a couple of quotes that I wanted to share with you all in regards to moving forward, specifically for white individuals who are on the call. One, the first is like, it may not, actually, Anthony, you set this up perfectly. It may not be your fault, but it is your fight. Alice Walker said, activism is the rent I pay for living on this planet. I will say that your bill is due. In fact, it's in collection. And so it is time to do something, considering your positionality where you sit. So if you're a business owner and you have no Black employees, that's a problem. If you're on a funding board and you don't fund efforts or programmatics, people who don't look like you, that's an issue. And so we have to be honest about our own racism. All right, so at this time, thank you so much. I don't know if I need to lead into anything else, but thank you.